with Senator Tom Cotton. Senator Cotton, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing well, Hugh. I apologize for being a little bit late. I'm still trying to figure out the math on how the Guardians have won every game for the last 6 weeks while building a lineup that bats .220.
My theory is that the baseball gods took a look at what the football gods had done to Cleveland for the last 26 years, and they're just going to make it happen. No matter the emotional damage done to the time. Yeah, it's the only way. No other explanation. Senator, I want to talk about very serious stuff. I talked about with Noah Rothman earlier, political violence. Because you were the first guy to peg the origin of the COVID virus in the Wuhan lab, I'm going to look for the origin of the political violence we're going through. But first, I want to categorize it either as left-wing, right-wing, insanity-driven, or Islamist. What do you think about the assassination of Charlie Kirk? Left-wing, right-wing, insanity, or Islamist?
I mean, obvious left-wing violence, the assassination of Charlie Kirk. You had a young man who his own parents had said had political views and moved to the left. The governor of Utah, no partisan gunslinger, had said the same thing, and you can just tell by what he wrote online or even on the bullet casings that he used. That this was a left-wing assailant and a center-right victim who was targeted for his political views.
All right. The assassination attempts, both of them on President Trump.
As far as we know, again, left-wing violence targeting a center-right politician while he was running for office. It seems to be a clear-cut case.
Justice Kavanaugh.
Again, no question, you had a left-wing hitman who flew all the way in from California, who had the tools and the equipment necessary for breaking and entering and kidnapping. Again, in all these cases, they show the kind of malice of forethought and premeditated planning that belie any claims that these were just lunatics or schizophrenics.
Congressional baseball practice where the GOP caucus was assaulted in 2017.
Again, Hugh, a Bernie Sanders supporter who intentionally planned and sought out a site where you would have multiple Republican elected officials. And thankfully, Hugh, Steve Scalise at the time, who was in the elected leadership of the House and therefore had a security detail, you had Capitol Police officers who bravely neutralized that threat. Just imagine what it would have been like in 2017 if they hadn't had that Capitol Police security detail there by happenstance.
How about the murderous attacks on the religious schools, Catholic in Minneapolis, evangelical in Nashville?
From everything we can tell, they seem to be left-wing ideological violence by self-identified transgendered person against Bible-believing Christians. I think in those cases, maybe that had some kind of affiliations with the school.
We've got some 3 attacks on ICE facilities, the most recent being yesterday. Do you have opinions on all or any of them?
Hugh, I haven't seen the latest reporting on them. I know the one in Dallas, there were shell casings found that were specifically targeting with anti-ICE messaging. And just generally speaking, I mean, why would anyone be targeting an ICE facility if they weren't ideologically opposed from the left to immigration enforcement?
I agree. The shooting into the ABC studio in Sacramento following the cancellation of Jimmy Kimmel.
Don't have enough information on that one, Hugh.
It's pretty easy. He was a left-wing advocate for the California Teachers Association. When you dig in, you'll find he's a very, very political person. I am a little confused on the country club shooting in New Hampshire because the details are foggy. Do you have better information than I do on that one?
No, Hugh. Not enough information, no.
And there was an attempted bombing of a Fox News van, which I have no idea. Do you have any better information on that?
I don't know, Hugh. And I do think, like, the fact that you and I both are saying that on some of these cases we simply don't know enough information, it is important in any of these moments not to jump to conclusions and wait until all the facts are ascertained. But once we know the facts, I think it's important to call these acts of violence what they are.
Now, I'm going to stipulate the 1-6 riot is right-wing violence. The attempt to kidnap Governor Whitmer, a Democrat in Michigan, is right-wing violence. They're not Republicans and they're not mainstream. They're radical right and racist in some cases. The murder of the Hartmans in Minnesota appears to be mental illness, although it was presented as right-wing violence, but that guy is not dealing with a full deck.
Yeah.
How do you go ahead?
Yeah.
And how do you categorize the riots after George Floyd's death?
Well, those were explicitly left-wing activists who are rioting and burning down American cities over supposed social justice claims. But Hugh, if I could go back to the ones you kind of moved through quickly, the riot on January 6th was bad, but you had a large rally, a massive rally, in which a small minority got caught up in the spirit of the mob, which is a bad thing. That's why you should avoid the mob spirit. And a minority of those committed acts of violence. But again, that is different, being caught up in a mob spirit in the moment, than deliberately and with premeditation planning the murder of a president or a conservative activist or a Supreme Court justice. Even, Hugh, in Michigan, you had a bunch of guys who actually were not planning, as far as we could tell from taking any kind of action, who were entreated by FBI informants to engage in a conspiracy against the governor of Michigan. There were no overt actions taken. That's why they were brought up on conspiracy charges, which, again, is different from what it appears happened in Utah, the deliberate, premeditated, planned assassination of a center-right public figure.
Now, the Antifa violence that has racked Portland, Seattle, President Trump's first inauguration, that's all left-wing anarchist violence. And it's not even worth debating, right? It's just left-wing anarchist violence.
Not, obviously, yeah.
So with all those things, number one, have you seen any major news media attempt to categorize and explain the cycle of violence that we're in?
Well, I mean, most of the mainstream media, which is, say, the liberal media, wants to equivocate and say, oh, this is a both sides problem, when, as we've just demonstrated, it really isn't a both sides problem. One that we missed, Hugh, was the arson at the governor's mansion in Pennsylvania.
Oh, you're right.
An awful act of violence against a Democratic governor perpetrated by a left-wing pro-Hamas zealot who thought the Democratic governor of Pennsylvania was too pro-Israel. So yet again, even though it was against a Democratic politician, it's an example of left-wing violence. That's why I say that political violence today in America is almost exclusively left-wing violence.
So now the hard question. You did guess. You reasoned to the Wuhan lab as the origin story before anybody else during COVID. You were first on the record. Maybe one of your first appearances on this show, you put that theory forward. What's the origin story for this cycle of left-wing violence? What is causing it?
Hugh, I haven't been able to pin it down to one thing, and it may not be one thing. I will say, though, that it is a return to a long historical pattern of left-wing violence. This didn't just happen recently. I mean, think about the Weather Underground in the 1960s and the SDS and some of the bombings on campuses, for instance. You could even go back to the French Revolution, Hugh, and come forward through the Russian Revolution, and there's just a long history of the political left around the world, to include here in America, using violence to obtain their political ends, what they can't obtain through the ballot box.
So is any media organization from the legacy side going to do a deep dive and attempt to categorize and follow? The academic stuff is nonsense. They make up categories that don't exist. And in fact, I'll give you the 5 choices. Almost exclusively left-wing, mostly left-wing, evenly divided, mostly right-wing, almost exclusively right-wing. What are we talking about here?
I'm sorry, Hugh, can you say that again?
Yeah, there are 5 choices. All the political violence since 2016 has been almost exclusively left-wing, mostly left-wing, evenly divided, mostly right-wing, almost exclusively right-wing.
Almost exclusively left-wing, and that's why the liberal media is trying to efface that reality and say this is a both sides problem.
I think you're right. Is anyone going to change that, do you think? We got 30 seconds.
Well, you and I have done what little we can. I think the president is doing what he can as well. That if there are networks of funding and support and training behind these acts of violence, then they need to be held accountable under criminal law.
I hope you are right. Senator Tom Cotton, always a pleasure to talk to you. Go Guards. Hope we meet the Red Sox in the postseason. Don't go anywhere, America. He's a Red Sox fan. Poor man. I'll be right back. It's the